the New York metro area's most eclectic radio station. You're listening to WFDU Teaneck.
89.1.
This is FDU Focus, and our guest today is Dr. Joseph V. Gulfo, Executive Director of Fairleigh Dickinson University's Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And if you think that's a mouthful, Dr. Gulfo is also spearheading the Initiative for Patient-Centered Innovation with the aim of helping to shape public policy that affects the way biopharmaceutical and related companies conduct business, particularly relating to patentable products and devices that lead to the advancement of science and medicine. Okay, I haven't lost you yet. Listen, because this is a half an hour you need to hear. And I'm going to start off with, first of all, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
But let's start off with the issue, the big issue. What is it?
The big issue is that we've never been in a better place in science than we are today. We have uncovered molecular pathways for cancer and inflammatory diseases that we didn't know existed when I was in medical school. Heck, we didn't know they existed 10 years ago. So the science is there, the understanding is there, the appetite for patients to have the latest and greatest of treatments available to them is there. And what's missing is the regulatory system. It just hasn't kept pace, and it is threatening true medical innovation and medical innovation that can do so many things to benefit our lives and reduce costs and just so many good things for society that we have to, it's now come to the point where it just absolutely has to be addressed.
And how do we do that?
Well, when you have a number of agencies that stand in the way of innovation, you have the FDA, you have the SEC, you have the Patent Office. And we'll take the FDA in particular because they are the largest government institution. They regulate 25 cents on every U.S. dollar. That is an amazing amount of power and bureaucracy to have to deal with. And what has happened is, good-intentioned people over time have created an institution that is completely unwieldy, unyielding and unwieldy, and just cannot be worked with. And that's what we really have. So we have to rethink. We have to get back to the basics. If we got back to the basics of the law when it was passed about promoting health, about doing it in a timely manner, if we got back to those basics, we can address these things. But it's just grown and grown and grown. I don't know if your listeners have been to D.C. recently. I go to D.C. a lot. And frankly, it sickens me. Every time I go, there's a new building. There's either a new government building or two new law office buildings because of how much our government continues to grow and grow and grow. And the growth of government means the growth of regulations, and the growth of regulations means a barrier to innovation.
So while you are here, what is your hope? Is there a marriage between business and the biopharmaceutical industry where working together you can streamline some of this?
Yes, it's not the industry's issue right now. You have a lot of people out there who want to be entrepreneurs. You have scientists who think they've discovered something, and they have, that has not been done before, and are eager to go and make it happen. The science is cooperating, as I led off with. You have capital that's available, right? So we've just been in a bit of a biotech boom, a lot of IPOs and things. The venture capital has come back. So there's capital available for good ideas. So what's standing in the way? And what's standing in the way is the regulation. So that's what the Institute, when I met with the head of the business school, and I met with Andy Rossman, I met with Chris Capuano, I said, the real barrier to innovation is regulation. So what we need to do here, we are in the medicine chest of the world. That's what New Jersey is. It's the medicine chest of the world. Nobody is speaking out against it. It makes sense that Fairleigh would speak out against this. You have a school of pharmacy. We have an MBA program for pharmaceuticals. We have, all these things going on in the field. And what we need to do is create a dialogue, a national dialogue about what's good about the regulations and what isn't so good, and how they can be adjusted to facilitate innovation, not block it.
To say that your coming to FDU is a long and winding road, thank you, Beatles,
Yeah.
is an understatement, to say the least. You started off as a medical doctor and then became involved in, well, first Valstar, I believe it was.
Right.
But then you became involved in trying to get a patent for something called Mellofind.
Yeah. So,
And that was a book that you wrote, Innovation Breakdown, How the FDA and Wall Street Cripple Medical Advances. A book, by the way, I read, and I would urge anyone out there to read this because while, yes, it is scientific, and I will tell you the people you hang around with are very intelligent people, this book is so well written and it is so to the point. And I said this to you before we started recording. By the time I finished reading this book, you asked me if I was angry, and I said I was angry, but I was exhausted. This long and winding road, tell me how long it took from when you started, and then we can hit the high points,
Right.
from when you took on this challenge to when you finally got a patent for this.
Oh,
an
right.
approval, I should say.
So right, that's right. The approval. So the patents are with the U.S. Patent Office,
Right.
And so you continually patent as you go.
As you go.
So you were right. We did patent a lot, and it's in the book. But the real issue was obtaining approval in the U.S. So I met the company in Thanksgiving time of 2002. I joined in January of 2003, and the approval didn't come until the end of 2011.
Now, when you consider the fact that in your book, you said, and I have it here, 1 American dies of melanoma every single hour.
Right.
You started in 2003/4.
Right.
Approval came in 2011.
Right. So 8 years.
8
Right.
years. That could have been saving lives.
Yes, absolutely.
I know what happened in the book. Tell our listeners some of the problems that you encountered in trying to get this approval.
Sure. So the first thing is I have experience. I've worked a lot with the FDA. I have several products approved, so I know how to work with the agency. And what I first was impressed about when I went to Mellofind was I couldn't get the FDA to call us back. So I knew something was particularly wrong. And I originally thought the reason was they really didn't understand the product. So I said, okay, this product is more like a smart MRI machine than it is a surgical device. Yet it was in the surgical devices division.
And yet it's non-invasive.
Right. It's not invasive. Thank you. Great point. So my first thought was, why don't we move it? So you got to work with people. So you got to put yourself in their position. If you didn't understand something, you wouldn't want to call back either, right? So let's why don't we go and move it to a group of people in the agency who would understand it? And while I was trying to do that, you need regulatory counsel to do that. And we worked with the top counsel in D.C. And while that was happening, the group that it was under started engaging. And so we met with them. And we spent a lot of time, and you're right, I don't want to cover every little facet, but we invested a year of time. Now, that's a lot of time for a little
Yes, it
company.
is.
Okay, and I didn't take a salary during that year. Investors put as much money as they have to put in. It's not like there's a spigot here, a flow of money. So we invested a year to establish what I call a relationship with the FDA. Mm-hmm. We had 3 meetings with them. We brought 4 of the top melanoma experts in the world with us. And to their credit, Celia Witten is someone at FDA that I have great respect for. And to her credit, after the 3rd meeting, she got it. And we signed what's called a binding protocol agreement. And that is a contract. It's very rare to get. And it's a contract that says, if you do this, this, and this that we agree to, that will prove safety and effectiveness, ergo approval. Mm-hmm. So we invested the time to do that. And then we went out to conduct all the clinical trials. And when we finished the largest study ever done in the disease, okay, that's FDA likes big trials. We gave it to them. We didn't fight with them. What do you want? And we went and did it. And when we went, the feedback was basically questioning back from square one. It was as if we didn't even have the agreement. It was, what is the clinical utility? So what? So what? You had a 98% sensitivity and a specificity higher than the doctors. That means it can detect the melanomas, and it can rightfully say it's not a melanoma. So what? What does that mean? What does that mean? We spent a year discussing what that means. You can't be doing this to us now. And then what happened
But they did.
And what happened was, the other huge problem with all of these agencies in DC, is it's not just about that drug or that device or that topic.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a broader political environment. And what just happened was there was an election, and FDA leadership was changed, and there was a decision at very high levels to revamp the whole device system of the FDA. So we were a bit of collateral damage. Basically, they wanted to just put everything on hold while they rewrote regulations. On hold. Here's a little publicly traded company right now. Patients are dying every hour. But again, the agencies get so big that they lose their mission. Their mission is to promote health.
Mm-hmm.
No, they see it as something much broader. So they tried to, from a regulatory perspective, make us go away. And they sent us a not approvable letter. And the problem with, another big problem with these agencies is they come up with these words. They come up with these terms. For instance, major deficiency letter. Oh my gosh, major deficiency. You would think that the sky is falling. No, they have 4 questions. Not approvable letter. Oh my gosh, everything you did stinks. No, they just want 6 more months to review it. So this is the problem. You have these terms that have such charged meaning outside of the field of expertise.
Which, of course, now is going to translate to the friends, the founders, the capital ventures, those angels, those
They're
people.
gone.
People now I'm talking about who would be giving money,
Right.
grant money, whatever kind of money, to this company to continue
Yes.
their research. They see major deficiency. They
Not
see
approval.
disapproval.
Right.
And they think, I'm not going to give money
Right.
to this company.
Right. So the stock plummets. We were at $13 a share, $300 million company, pre-approval. That is amazing for a device company, amazing. And with the regulatory machinations that FDA pulls, okay, and everybody knows their machinations, and you just deal with them, right? But when you're a publicly traded company and you suffer that, you lose your good fundamental investor base. You get in the hands of the short sellers and the deal players. Your stock gets really low, and then it's impossible to raise more money. So we got caught up in this vortex of bad things. Then what happened was we fought back, and the FDA does not like when you fight back. And, it's funny. I don't look for a fight, but I was born in Brooklyn. And, yeah. And so we hit back with a supervisory review request, and it made the new head of the device division look really, really bad. So at that point, they had it in for us. And we insisted on them giving us this formal hearing, and it's called a panel meeting. And I've never heard of it before us nor after us. We went into this panel meeting with a non-approvable letter extant, meaning the FDA said it's not approvable. We're still going to a panel of peers, a panel of experts.
By the way, let me stop you here
Yeah.
because you talk about panels in the book. Who appoints those? How do those come to be? Because it seems to me that it would be the fox guarding the chickens if it's the FDA that gets to appoint them.
You hit. I'm thrilled. You palpated that. That's exactly right. It's funny. It's like if you ever saw. I was going to make a movie reference, but just cut right to this. It's a trial. These panels are a trial where the FDA is both the judge, the prosecuting attorney, and they pick to the jury.
Okay. That's what I was getting from this. So you were not only going up against an FDA structure that was pushing against you.
Right.
You then had to also convince a panel
Right.
of people that had been chosen by
Right.
this same structure that was pushing back
Yes.
on you.
Yes. And not only that, I had experienced in my prior life with panels and not having the right expertise on panels, so that was very important to me. And I had provided FDA a list of dermatologists that I touched in some way, consultants, clinical trialist, someone who had a breakfast with me for over an hour. Okay, these are all the people I've touched. And I purposely didn't touch these 25 experts in melanoma because I knew you'd need experts with no conflicts later. They didn't pick one person from the list that I never touched, yet they picked several from the list I did touch. Of course, they found several who didn't like the product. So it's unconscionable. The advisory committee system, the panel system of the FDA is unconscionable. They either have people who don't treat the disease, or under these ridiculous conflict of interest rules they pick, they get to select the ones they want. So we were going up against, against all odds. You've read the book, and I don't have any other words than I put in there about the odds of success here. I honestly did not think we were going to win. And, as we said in the book, the greatest 15 minutes of my life, somehow we won. But
how do you keep your equilibrium during this kind of a trial and tribulation?
It's very funny. They said last night on Monday Night Football, Drew Brees is one of those sports figures who seems to focus and slow down when everything else around him is going crazy. And somehow that's the way I get. When it just seems like it's unbelievable, I actually laugh a little bit. Like I find it funny in a warped way that, can you believe this is happening? And I think I just realized, well, I can't attend to the 27 things that are happening in this circus. Let me pick the most important. And that's what we had to do. We just constantly pick the battles.
And is that how you stay focused and not get angry?
Who said I wasn't angry?
Well, I know you're angry, but you were able to go back into the nest of vipers and not lash out.
No, and thank you for bringing that up. In fact, one of our lawyers, who's a former FDAer for 20 plus years, gave me a great compliment about that. At the very end, he said to me, Joseph, very interestingly, no matter what they did to you, no matter how many agreements they broke and all these things, no matter what was going on, you never stopped treating them with respect. And look, that's my faith, okay? That's my parents. You treat people with respect.
Mm-hmm.
You love the sinner. You might not be too crazy about the sin. So that's just natural to me to still treat you with respect, even if you have a view 180 degrees different than mine.
But you strike me as the type of person who will then say, but now I'm going to do something about it.
Well, I'll go get an ulcer, right? Which I did. It'll affect my health. It'll make me a wreck. But outwardly, you really can't show that.
I also would like to know what it's like to fly with your hand broken. You mentioned that. You broke your hand. You were flying. And you said one line stuck out. You said, even the ice that you put on your hand hurt.
Yes. What's funny
is you have to understand, you are really going above and beyond the call of duty here to get something done. And ultimately, you said you won.
Yeah. Well, I think I love you bringing up those points. So the message of the book and the Institute is, if innovation is going to be this hard, that it's going to take someone, a Herculean effort. It's going to take someone who plays full court basketball in the morning, knowingly breaks his hand and keeps playing, so that the guys can still run full court. If one guy goes down when you have only 10, they can only play half court. I kept playing with my broken hand. I kept playing long enough that I knew I wouldn't be able to get to the hospital before going to the airport to get to Germany. And I flew there with the broken hand. This is the kind of person you're dealing with. I'm a little bit crazy, okay?
Okay, crazy can be good, though, when it's focused. So you're now taking your brand of crazy, and I'm really using that in a very complimentary sense, I want you to know. And you're bringing it here to the Rothman Institute,
right,
to Fairleigh Dickinson University. Tell me how you're going to craft that now. What do you want to see? Do you want programs?
Yeah. So what we first want to do is make awareness. And there's a lot of groups out there trying to make people aware of the problem. But there's really no group that I've met that is has the experience we have vis-a-vis the book you just read. So it's in the trenches experience. I just got called, another case in point, I got called by a group last week. They wanted me to put my name to something. It's a very well-known group about biomarkers. And I said, I'll sign it, but let me tell you the problem with what you're asking. The FDA will then take 3 years to put a blue ribbon panel together. The first 18 months of those 3 years will be selecting what color blue. Okay, and I remember, and the guy's on the phone with me, and he says, Joe, we just love talking to you because we just don't think that way. We don't think. I said, practically, and he admitted it. Yeah, practically. I said, that's not going to work. I'll still sign it because it's a good idea, but what's going to work is, and so that's what we're trying to do here differently. We're trying to be to bring this practical. It's an institute of entrepreneurship and innovation, right? That's a practical thing. So we wanted the foundation of a practical institute taking on these high-minded ideas, right? So right now what we're doing is these MI3 alerts, Medical Innovation Impact Index alerts, where we have a group of advisors. We take a hot topic of the day and we write a balanced pro and con on it. We rate it, and then we come up with recommendations. And then we get editorials placed. So we now have a column in The Hill, which is a very influential magazine in D.C.
Absolutely.
Right?
Can you give me an example of
Sure.
one of the markers that you're...
Yes. So we just wrote one on patent review system. There's a new it was a new law a couple of years ago to get out these frivolous patent suits that were going on and blocking innovation. Great idea. Really, really great idea. It was excellent for the tech companies, but it was very bad for medical companies because it allowed, for instance, groups like hedge funds to institute a patent challenge, even though they didn't have a horse in the race. They weren't developing a product.
I see what you're saying.
And then the courts could dismiss the patent, and it would ruin the companies. And so what the hedge funds are doing is they were just filing these patent suits, making the stock go down and shorting them. So we wrote a really, really good inter partes review critique, and it got picked up in CNBC, right, in addition to The Hill, and we got a lot of publicity for it. I got a lot of phone calls about that. We just wrote one on the off-label use. So when a drug gets approved, it's labeled for one thing, but it can be used anywhere. There's a lot of controversy over whether it can be promoted, and 2 big court rulings came in on it. So we did a piece on it.
Well, that's something that's actually now been changed. In other words, you're starting to see some results.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. And so we wrote a piece saying that we like the way the courts did this, and we would add one thing to it, and then we go around and talk about it. So right now, this is what's happening. It's so gratifying. I mean, this was an idea in the book. You read the book. I had 2 goals with the book. I wanted to create an institute, and I want to start a fund, actually. And so it went from just words on a page to reality here, and we've issued our 5th one, and I think it'll take about a year. We'll get out a dozen of these. I'm doing some other things as well that I'd like to come back and talk to you about. But I think once we create a groundswell of recognition and support and quality, it's so gratifying to hear people call me and say they've never seen, something of this quality on this topic. So I think, it's just like when you raise money. You can never just go to an investor on the first meeting and get money. You have to go to them, tell them what you're going to do, go do it, and then you come back. So that's what we're doing right now.
I have a question.
Yes.
That involves people like myself, baby boomers who are now getting to the point where drugs are significant parts of our lives. Our medical areas have expanded, and yet we don't have the same knowledge that someone like yourself would have. How can you educate those people to understand? Your book really did a good job with that. I will be honest, there were technical parts of it that I had to go back and reread because I'm not in the category of some of these people you were working with. How can we empower and educate the American public?
Okay. I love it. So doctors like nothing more than patients ready to take control of their diseases. Okay? So if you do your homework, now this is what you're asking me, what's the homework? There are many great places to get information, and there are some sketchy places. So,
right.
So, the most well-known is WebMD,
Correct.
right? So I think that's a great place to start.
That was in the back of my mind as I was just asking this.
Yes, WebMD is a great place to start. There are patient forums on the internet. So actual patients with a disease talking about what they're experiencing. I highly recommend, especially patients with chronic diseases, some chronic debilitating diseases, talk with other patients through the internet, see what they're experiencing.
Get involved.
Right. And it's like our country, federalism. We wanted 50 experiments going on. And then the best ones would be adopted by others. It's the same thing. So on these forums, you might hear of patients that, hey, my doctor at MD Anderson is doing this for me. Really? Oh, let me talk to my doctor about that. So the patients with really chronic diseases, I firmly feel they should do that. More general things, I think WebMD is great. And I also think prevention, just taking your health seriously, not taking it for granted is very, very important. But, I wrote that book so that you wouldn't need to have a science degree to read it. I tried to keep it in a storytelling manner.
You absolutely succeeded in every way, shape, and form. It is a brilliant book, and it's frightening. It's frightening of what one person, you, and the people who did help you with this, but what you had to go through to get one medical device.
Non-invasive.
Non-invasive. Right. And you also, and this is for another show, where you talk about a device that you want to get approved that's already, that you're making an improvement upon, as opposed to a device that is something completely new in the market. Right. That's for another show, because that's something that you said could even take a lot longer to do. And believe it or not, we're actually starting to, our time is running out. We've actually been going now for about 25 minutes. At the end of this book, you write a manifesto.
Right.
Can you, for the FDA, some changes you would like to see there? Give me some of the high points there.
And the manifesto is the basis for the IPCI, the Initiative for Patient-Centered Innovation. And again, different from so many other institutes in D.C., I'm not calling for a radical new thing. I'm calling very specific things like you're asking for. How about advisory committees with respect to that? How about making sure you have people who treat the disease on advisory committees? How about using a voir dire process? We all watch TV. That's legal shows where the defense can object to 2 jurors, right? That's a simple thing. That's a fair thing. How about, the FDA has an ombudsman. That's a good thing. They have someone.
Yeah.
But the ombudsman reports to too low a level. The ombudsman should report to the commissioner. It used to. They changed it. Why? Let's have the ombudsman report back to the commissioner and make quarterly reports to Congress. Right? This is not requiring 3,000 pages of regulation to change. Right? So I have a lot of specific fixes from in the trenches like that. Another thing, the FDA is supposed to review and approve a drug based on its safety and effectiveness. They've moved from that. They now want these huge trials on outcomes and whether it improves survival. Well, why? I mean, that's what costs so much money and takes so long. Does the drug have pharmacologic activity, and can it be labeled for safe use? If it can, then it needs to get out in the medical marketplace where doctors will use it and arrive. These very basic things. And I'm not stupid, okay, but I like to think of myself as a simple guy, and these are simple fixes. Well,
I highly recommend, again, anyone who can get a hold of this book, and I'm sure it's in the bookstores now, Innovation Breakdown. You've been listening to FDU Focus. Our special guest, Dr. Joseph Gulfo, Executive Director of Fairleigh Dickinson University's Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Thank you so very much for being a part of the show today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And until next time, stay focused.